Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. We are only one day away from the FIA confirming whether any teams have breached the budget cap for the 2021 season, and fireworks are about to commence on that one. But amid all this Red Bull versus Mercedes drama kicking off yet again, George Russell has explained that Mercedes understands exactly what was wrong with this year's car, what they have to do for next year to fix it, have a good idea of the philosophy in mind, and expect to be right back to the front of the grid. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate loads of new subs yesterday. Love to see it. Let's just crack straight on here with some news around the world. Firstly, driver market stuff. We expect announcements very soon on Gasly to Alpine. Apparently, Jack Doohan is going to be their reserve driver. I believe he's currently in the Alpine system in Formula 2, so I guess that makes sense. Nick De Vries is going to be to AlphaTauri, and Williams also, I think, want Nick De Vries, but he's going to go to AlphaTauri, it seems. Therefore, that leaves them with two options. Either they can get Logan Sargent in from their effectively Academy Formula 2 system, American driver, or Mick Schumacher could be an option if Nico Hülkenberg goes to Haas. There's been various talks about this, whether Mick Schumacher's going to stay at Haas, whether he's going to go, and Hülkenberg has been in consideration, although there was some people saying that after Singapore or during the weekends, discussions opened with Mick in terms of contract extension, so we'll see how it goes. But if Hülkenberg goes to Haas, then Mick Schumacher, you'd think maybe to Williams might make more sense than Logan Sargent. Who really knows? I guess they'll decide what they decide over in due course, and that's kind of said here in this article that Mick Schumacher is under consideration to join Williams, depending on the availability of De Vries, probably not, and then Logan Sargent as well, their Formula 2 guy that some say, is he ready, is he not ready? Jos Capito, I believe, has also said that Sargent will be in an F1 seat at some point or another, but maybe if they can get Mick Schumacher, they'd prefer to do that. Who knows? We'll see as time progresses here. Let's talk budget cap then. So everyone, Ferrari, Mercedes, keep piling on the potential of Red Bull exceeding the budget cap. Now, the understanding is, the rumours that are going around, the Red Bull have to some degree exceeded the $145 million budget cap-ish for 2021 with their kind of submission. Their submission was under the cap, but for various reasons, they may have ended up over it. Now, I think most believe that they have breached it, but it's whether they've breached it by a lot or a very small amount, which is the key question. But of course, look, all the top teams want to ensure that when the FIA confirms tomorrow, they're meant to confirm tomorrow, whether they delay it, who knows, the certificates of compliance to all the teams, whether they did comply with the rules or whether they did not. And if Red Bull and Aston Martin didn't, then Ferrari, Mercedes effectively want blood right for this from Red Bull, whatever that could potentially involve. The FIA could make up their call in due course, and even if Ferrari has doubled down on the fact that, look, only a minor overspends, $5 million, which is considered minor, albeit pretty major in the grand scheme of things, could maybe give as much as half a second of lap time in performance. So they want, kind of compensation for this to some degree or another in terms of maybe deductions for, Verstappen or Perez's, and also Red Bull's kind of points from that season, or other things they could do in terms of reducing budget cap for future seasons and stuff. And of course, it makes sense. The budget cap rules are so integral now to the performance of the cars that they are equally on the playing field with, technical regulations and the like. If you breach them, there should be consequences, and obviously the drivers and the teams are right to point this out. Now, of course, whether any team has actually breached it is another question. Helmut Marko even was implying that, I believe, Toto Wolff's former advisor, we even talked about this discussion before, is now working for the FIA. So Helmut Marko was kind of implying that she might have let Toto Wolff in on the secret there. But of course, by implying that, he's kind of also implying that there is some validity to the idea they may have breached the budget. And even Helmut Marko, these guys, they just love stirring the pot, right? And he said, Toto Wolff just needs to get over Abu Dhabi effectively. Now, apparently, Red Bull, Red Bull are a great team for many reasons, but they do like very much pushing the envelope on what is possible, right? And we even saw this season with potentially the flexi flaw that they might have been exploiting, in fairness, since that's kind of got away. It's not like their cars got worse or anything. It's really Ferrari that seemed to be affected by that. But they found this loophole. Mercedes maybe didn't find it, which has now been closed. And they may have also believed they found loopholes in the financial regulations. They have apparently said here, now I'm not sure on the validity of this source, to be honest. I haven't really seen this elsewhere, so let's just keep that with a bit of a grain of salt. But apparently Red Bull has admitted that they interpreted the financial regulations differently from how the FIA are. Apparently there are 6 items they are discussing. So I guess Red Bull's accountants or whatever looked at the rules and said, okay, maybe here, and here, we can maybe spend a bit more than they say we can if we do it in this way, right? Classic accountancy type stuff. Now, whether the FIA is going to say, you know what, fair enough, you've got a point there, or whether they're going to be like, hang on a second there, you've just tried to bend the rules to spend more more money, we shall see. And maybe this isn't even true anyway, but look, the certificates of conformity will apparently be released tomorrow, so look, we'll see. But the rumour has it, many sources are indicating that there was some degree of an overspend. Even Ted Kravitz actually said on Sky Sports earlier today that from what he's hearing, there is something, like there is some breach potentially, but it's not maybe as major as some of these other teams are kind of getting onto. And yeah, he was kind of implying that Toto Wolff and some others from Ferrari are bigging this up into more of a big deal than it potentially will be to, paint Red Bull as, cheat Bull and all this type of stuff. So, like, we'll stay tuned, but that's the update for now on the whole budget cap drama. And even this I thought was interesting because Toto Wolff, I believe, was not due to attend the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka because now they're getting so many races. This season there's a lot, next season there's 24, and as he actually says, it's not sustainable for anyone to do 24 races. Of course, the drivers have to, but in terms of, staffing, and Toto Wolff has a lot of responsibilities outside of just being the team principal at Mercedes. He does other stuff as well. And it seems like Mercedes are preparing for next season to, effectively skip races, right? So like some people take over for some races and others for other races and stuff like this, so they can be as fresh as they possibly can be and not have to fly everywhere every single weekend. But I believe he was not going to attend the Japanese Grand Prix this coming weekend, but has actually changed his mind and now will attend because he wants to be there in person for all this budget cap stuff that may or may not be going on. So look, they're pretty confident that there is some degree of non-conformity from Red Bull. We'll see tomorrow what the FIA have to say, and then if there is a breach, then the discussion is what should the punishment be, and then I'm sure all hell is going to break loose yet again. Now, speaking of course of the Mercedes Red Bull drama, coming back to the four, this weekend we thought we might have some good fights on track between Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull. Turned out that despite a good qualifying, Hamilton being stuck behind Sainz really meant that, well, Mercedes were never fighting for the victory this weekend. Next year though, Mercedes know full well that this year's car was not great at all, but it was good on certain tracks, right? Zandvoort, Singapore, maybe some others before the end of the season. It will prove to be at least solid. Even in Spain, when they brought their first update, relatively higher downforce circuits, maybe similar in some senses to Suzuka, it was pretty good. And of course, they've brought further upgrades since then. But on tracks that are lower downforce, Monza and the like, the car's way too draggy to be successful, especially compared to the Red Bull. So of course, they've got plenty of issues to deal with there. The porpoising issue there, the bottoming out issue there, the ride height issue, all of this type of stuff that they haven't necessarily fully resolved, but at least they understand now much better. And George Russell reckons they are very confident in their philosophy for next season. As he describes here, we have a philosophy that we are going to be trying to adopt in our development, and I am very confident that it is the correct one. But equally, it doesn't mean we can necessarily achieve it. It's not saying it's like a slam dunk, of course. Look, we know that Lewis Hamilton said before this year's car was unveiled that his team don't make mistakes, and maybe they don't make mistakes from a budget gap perspective, but this year's car obviously wasn't what they were looking for. Russell goes on to say we have a target, and that is a massive positive in itself, which is pretty interesting because the last couple of weeks or so there's been the discussion that Mercedes don't really know what they want to do. They're not convinced in what philosophy they want to adopt, whether they want to copy the Red Bull, the Ferrari or whatever, but I believe even other Mercedes engineers have said that look, if you copy something, the copy is never quite it's never quite as good as the original, right? So they kind of want to stick by their own idea, but at least they've got an idea apparently in terms of what they want to achieve and how the car is going to be designed. And then he goes on to say, look, I have every confidence we can achieve that. We obviously don't know how much our rivals are going to improve over the winter, but I definitely have confidence that we will have a more complete car across the circuit range. Kind of their key issue really, that they're good on some tracks and very poor on others. And as he goes on to say, we've only managed to learn over the course of these races, and the triple header really kind of confirmed some of their theories that the differential between the low downforce and high downforce circuits is certainly true. Goes on to say, classic Mercedes PR fashion, I don't want to go into too much detail because it's something we've worked very hard on to understand and hopefully will give us an advantage into next year. So I don't want to say anything that will potentially benefit our rivals, because I believe he also mentioned earlier this season that there's some understandings that Mercedes have gained with their struggles that they believe other teams will fall into the trap of going forwards, and they don't want to kind of let on any of their ideas they have, such that hopefully other teams fall into those similar pitfalls. As he says, every single car is different. I thought we understood our car a couple of different times, turned out not to be the case, but I think we've had enough races now that I can't really imagine there's going to be another kind of surprise that catches us by surprise. We've had the porpoising issues, the ride issues, car touching the ground, damaging the floor, so many issues. We now believe we have a direction that we need to head in. So what does this potentially mean going forwards? Of course, this season, thanks to Code F1 for this, hasn't been the greatest of Mercedes. They've now fallen again a fair bit behind Ferrari in their fight for second in the constructors. But it seems to me the key point really for Mercedes next season is to just produce a car that actually can compete on all circuits, because this season it became clear after a while that some tracks were going to be terrible for Mercedes and some were going to be, okay to good to potentially great depending on the situation, and that is their key milestone next year, because in terms of points, they're not massively far behind where they need to be to compete, but a lot of that comes from lack of competitiveness on the various circuit ranges, and seemingly they've got a good idea of their philosophy that they want to go forward with. Just to mention, of course, because Suzuka is coming up, another kind of medium to high-ish downforce circuit, so potentially going to be a good one for Mercedes yet again, we shall see. Interestingly enough, actually, the last time Ferrari won at Suzuka was way back in 2004, which is quite something, really, to think about, given the amount of times that we've raced there in the last 20 or so years. And of course, look, Max Verstappen again is going to go into this weekend as the favourite. If he wins with the fastest lap, that will be enough guaranteed to solidify his place as the world champion. There has been a fair few world champions in history crowned in Japan. All the while, Red Bull are trying to kind of re-spark the fire with Honda, seemingly, just because the Porsche thing has now almost certainly fallen through with not just Red Bull, but any team, as is the present rumour. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.